Hey everyone, welcome back to the Layback Podcast. Joining us today is the head coach of the Duke University Blue Devils, Corey Muscara. I've been trying to nail this guy down for a while. Thankfully, I can get him on text and on the phone here and there, usually at 7 a.m. or at 9:30 p.m. I think when most of the world is asleep or trying to wind down, that's when this guy's cranking. But thankfully, we finally got him on here for a little recording. Looking forward to chatting with him today a little bit about what he's looking forward to this year, how he's running his program, and then, of course, selfishly, as many of you know, I've got a child on the way, and this man has been raising a family and just doing his best to be a family man while he has climbed the ladder of college baseball. So I look forward to using this really selfishly so I can get some life advice in the process while we continue to grow Flex Pro Grip. So Corey, thanks a ton for coming on, and I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm like the perfect guy for this, but I'll do my best to be transparent and authentic about how to help you navigate being a father and still juggling life.
You can talk to anyone about these things. I mean, I've got my dad, and obviously he and I are very close to be running a business together. But it helps to have the outside perspective. Sometimes you can only go to your own dad so much. So I figured I'd go to someone that really lives a life that I think is very enviable from my position. I love baseball. I love college baseball. And really, I mean, I eat, sleep, drink, breathe, dream these things. And you're obviously doing it every day with a loving family at home who has been on a wild roller coaster in itself this summer. So, I mean, we can even go into that right away. Where'd you meet your wife? When did you guys start having kids?
Yeah,
And
so my
how
wife
did
and I met.
Susie
This
sign
is
up for this process?
yeah, this is funny. So I met my wife in college at Siena College. So at Siena College, they have a really beautiful library called the Standish Library. And she had on the third floor, she had this cubicle study area that she would go to every day, and it would look down on the baseball field. And so she knew me by my number because she would look down at the field all the time. And by chance, we were at a party one day. One of my friends wanted to be introduced to one of her friends, and he was too shy. So I went up to introduce a friend of mine to one of her friends, and she intercepted the interaction and put her hand out and introduced herself. And at the time, she was wearing a shirt that said "Single and Fabulous." She had just broken up with her boyfriend, and she said, "Hi, you're number 18, and I'm Susie Orser." And I said, "Hi, I'm Corey. I'm also newly single." And so from then on, we've been together really ever since. So you asked the question about like, how do you navigate this? The truth of the matter is you can't do anything without your wife. She is the glue to everything. My wife is a rock star. When I started in coaching, like all coaches, I made no money, and I'm a little bit of a psychopath. So I go, go, go all day long. And when I first started, I wasn't making any money. I was working nonstop. She was the breadwinner. She put up with a lot of my grief. But ever since she met me, I said I wanted to be a college baseball coach, even when we were dating in college. That's what I've always wanted to do. I don't think she knew the depths of what she was getting into. The first, I would say, 7 or 8 years were very challenging. I didn't make very much money, and I worked tirelessly. She had to support us. So we made a lot of sacrifices along the way. At the time, when we got married, we were living in New York, and the cost of living was very high. And we had a really cool apartment, one-bedroom apartment in White Plains. It was outrageously overpriced. And on the salary I was making and on the money she was making as a teacher, we really had no business living there. We weren't saving any money. And my wife has always been super financially responsible. So we made a bold strategy and a bold move, and we moved in with her parents. Yeah, wild. And so I drove an hour and 20, hour and a half without traffic every day to work. And we lived rent free with her parents. And because we did that for 2 years. So we were married for 2 years, and we had our own place. And 2 years into marriage, we moved in with my in-laws. Luckily for me, I get along with my in-laws very well. And I was always working. So I would get up and leave the house at 5 a.m. and I'd get home at 8:30 or 9. So I was never there, and I would work 7 days a week. My wife was happy as could be because she was with her mom and dad. And she's part of a big family. She's one of 9. So most of her siblings were in the area. You hear about living with your in-laws and you think it's going to be like not good. It was actually great. because I get along with them very well. They're awesome. And they really changed the trajectory of our family because we didn't pay for rent and we saved everything. So then from there, when I got the job at Maryland, we were able to buy a townhouse, and that was huge because we couldn't have afforded it if we hadn't done that. We were able to sell the townhouse when I went to Wake, and we did well on that. We were able to get a really nice house in Winston, and we just sold that. So that move was kind of scary on the outside looking in, but it was probably the best move ever. It was like we hit the lottery. And it worked out really well because it honestly probably saved our marriage because I was never home. I mean, never. Like, I was like, she got married to me and I was like, not even there ever once. And we didn't have kids the first 2 years. So we had a baby in year 3 of being married. And that was like my 6th or 7th year coaching. And then right away when our oldest Theodore was around, I'm trying to think of how old. He was probably like just shy of a year old. I want to say he was like 7 or 8 months. I took the job at Maryland. We moved down to Maryland. We had our second child when I was at the University of Maryland in our townhouse. And then we had our third child, Anna, who's 20 months now, when I was at Wake. So that's kind of the trajectory of that. And probably the entire time I was at St. John's, I think she hated me being a baseball coach because it robbed her of time with me and me being around. The living at home was very helpful. And the first year or two at Maryland were super tough. I moved her away from her family. We had to make a lot of sacrifices. And eventually, when we had our second child, she decided that she was going to stay home because we were going to pay more in childcare than we were for her work, with her working. And so that was tough too because she loved her job and she'd worked so hard at it. So she made a major sacrifice there. And the last year that we were at Maryland, she started getting into radical acceptance and she started to do like all of these like self-help things. During COVID, we got close and we both worked really hard on who we were as individuals. We both read a lot. We went on family walks. And, COVID was a tough time for a lot of people. They lost a lot of jobs. There was people that got sick and a lot of bad things happened from COVID. For our family, it was kind of a blessing because we got to be around each other every day and we got to work on each other and our relationship, and we had to be around each other every day for the first time. So that was actually pretty helpful. What was born out of that was she became totally invested in being a baseball wife. And now my wife is like as ride or die as it gets. She goes to every game. She knows like when kids go in the transfer portal, when we're not playing, she's watching other teams play. She's like dialed. She knows everything and she's super locked in and she wants us to do well. She hit me with this. She's like, I finally realized that when you win, I win. So you need to win. So we're going to make sure that happens. And that's when things started to go really well. She's really understanding. She manages everything in the house from like our bills to the kids to everything. She's the boss. Number one rule is happy wife, happy life. So if you make sure mama's happy, you have a shot. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to do everything right. But if mama's happy or if mama's at least like able to be okay, then you got a chance. The second mama's not happy, you're in trouble. Like you're not in a good place. So whatever you do, make sure your wife is happy because she's going to run the show a lot. And your job is to make sure that you don't upset her. Okay, so whatever you need to do to make her happy, you do. And I'm telling you right now, that is the best advice I can give you. I don't do it right all the time. I'm not perfect. She might listen to this at some point and be like, he's full of it. But I can promise you that the number one goal every day is not to make mom mad. So that's number one. As far as the kids, if you're really getting aggressive with your job and you're trying to chase success, working a lot and it's tough on the kids. So the biggest thing, and my wife's really, again, the one that makes this happen. The biggest thing is trying to get the kids around as much as possible. Try to get them at games, try to get them to the field to practice. We're renting a house here because we're trying to find the right fit in the right house in the right neighborhood. But it was pretty essential for us to be super close to campus because if I needed to run home for like 2 seconds, I can. If I need to run over to their school for something, I can. Our house here is only 4 minutes away from the field. So like just yesterday, for example, I took the kids to school and I forgot to take the car seats out of my car, and she needed them in her car. So I was in the middle of like 100 things at work, but I sprinted home to try to get the car seats home. Again, I didn't get there in time, but the attempt to get there was what mattered, you know? And so it's little things like that that are really important. My kids, obviously, they play soccer, they play Little League Baseball, and it's hard. I miss a lot of their games. Any chance I can get to go, you got to go. And I've gotten this advice from a lot of my coaching friends. You know, the worst thing, like, you know, everybody has egos in this business and they chase winning and they chase personal accolades. And, you know, our jobs are all predicated on winning. But if you win and you make a lot of money, but your family hates you, then you really have nothing. The most important thing is that your kids get to see you, and when you're around, be present. I'm always on the phone recruiting. So one of the things that I need to get better at, like when I was at Maryland and I was at St. John's, Maryland, we were about 45 minutes from home, and there was traffic. So sometimes it'd be an hour. At St. John's, I was an hour and a half, and there was always traffic. So it was usually like 2 hours. So I used to use that time. Ed Blankmeyer actually told me this, like every time you're in the car, just be on the phone. So I used that time to make all my calls. What was harder when I got to Wake was we were only 12 minutes from campus and there's no traffic. And now I'm 4 minutes from campus with no traffic. So you got to be really organized with your scheduling. So one of the things I had to learn was I had to make sure that I could put my kids to bed every night and at least spend an hour with them at dinner and putting them to bed. And then I would start my recruiting phone calls after that, which again, it eats away at the time that you get to spend with your wife. So you have to like allocate certain nights of the week that you're going to try to be present for her. So that's important. I think scheduling is vital. Like you really have to try to schedule your time. You hear the phrase that like time is money, but it really, really is. Like you got to manage every day, every second. Plan it like way out in advance. Make sure, my advice there is like try to plan like the weekends you're going to be offline, try to plan vacations, try to plan family events as far out as possible. So when you're trying to do deals and you're trying to like grow your business, you have like blocked out periods of time. With college baseball, we have dead periods, quiet periods, some things like that that help facilitate that. We have to make sure that like during that time, we're being a dad. The last 45 or 50 days, I've been anything but that. It's been probably the craziest 45 to 50 days of my career. There's literally not enough time in the day. I wish there was 4 of me to do all the things. Like even in this call right now, I'll probably have 50 text messages and 25 emails that I need to get to ASAP. If you're a competitive person, you feel like you need to get to those things always right away. But the truth of the matter is I don't really follow this advice very well. I have a hard time with this. But you can always get to another day. I need to take that advice better myself, but it is a challenge. At the end of the day, like you want to be really good. You want to meet everybody's needs, but it's not possible. The last thing I'll say that's super important, and I have not done this at all, but you need to make sure that you have time for yourself. When I'm performing at my best, it's when I get up in the morning and I do my morning routine and I do my breathing and I meditate and I journal. In order to do that, you got to go to bed early. So you got to get up early and you got to do it before the kids get up. I have not done that at all since like probably the end of our season. And I don't think I've done it one day. It's probably the longest stretch I've gone in 5 years without doing that. And I need to, because if you don't feel yourself and you don't allow yourself to have clarity and focus, then you're going to have like a shorter fuse. Your bandwidth isn't going to be as strong. So it's important. You hear this a lot, but it's very important that you try to make time that you can keep yourself focused and centered so you're not as stressed out. You got to be adaptable, right? So like another thing I'll say is like when you have a new baby, the baby's always, I don't know if your wife's going to breastfeed or if you're going to do.
That's the goal.
Yeah. So here's what I'll say to that. It's great for the kid and everything like that, but it's a lot on the mom. And she's always up like feeding the child and everything like that. And there's only so much you can do in that. So my best advice there is like, if she says get up, like do whatever you can, whether it's like, you know, cleaning the next bottle or helping her get a towel or whatever, like anything she needs, just do it, because you're not going to be up nearly as much as she is. So make sure that you think about it from this lens, like, yeah, you're tired and you're going to be, and yeah, it's hard, but it's not as hard as it is on her. Because the other thing is, like, when a woman has a baby, like, they have to go through all the hormonal changes as well, and that's a lot that us as men can't even fathom. We get really caught up in like our own lives and like what we're doing, and they have to deal with so much more. It's like an affirmation. You have to like tell yourself, hey, like, don't complain here, don't roll your eyes. Again, I'm saying that I do those things. I'm feeling guilty now trying to give advice because I sound hypocritical and I'm not great at it. But luckily, my wife gives me a lot of grace and forgives me when I'm not acting to the standard that I'm telling you to act like. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just have grace. I'll give you this
That's great, man.
last piece of advice, right? So, if you ask anyone when they're leaving the hospital with their first child, it's so scary, and you're like walking so gingerly with the car seat and the baby in the car seat, and you're almost like moving in slow motion because you think you're dealing with like an egg that you don't want to break, and you're very timid and you're very nervous, and you're driving home from the hospital and you're going like 5 miles an hour because you're so nervous, and everybody can sense it and everybody can see it. And we were leaving the hospital with our first child, and a nurse saw us like, oh, you guys are first time parents, aren't you? Like, she knew right away because you just reeks of like, you're so nervous. And we're like, yeah. We like probably look like petrified. And the nurse said, here's a bit of advice. There's 6 billion people on this planet, and most of them are probably not as equipped to do this as you guys are. So if you think about the 6 billion people on the planet, there's many people that don't have your bandwidth to do this job, and they survived. So kids are more resilient than you think, and you don't have to be perfect. You just have to have the intention to be as good as you can with what you can. And if you do that, you're going to be fine. And that actually was like, of all the cliches you hear, that was the thing that helped me the most, because I was actually petrified, and that helped me like breathe a little bit. And it's funny I'm telling you all this. My recruiting coordinator, Will Craig, just had a baby 2 days ago. So
Congrats to Will.
Yeah, he just had a new boy. He's back in Nashville. Crazy time for him. He's changing jobs. They're selling their house. They're moving. And they just had a brand new baby boy. So it's exciting. It's a lot. And, you know, sometimes you feel like you're missing out on things you're supposed to do at work, but you can always get to it at another time.
That's kind of the perfect segue. Well, first and foremost, before I even get into that, I want to say thank you for all the advice, everything you've been through. I know you kept saying you feel hypocritical. Maybe this can serve as a little bit of a reminder of all the things that are important. Maybe Susie will be proud of you for at least bringing this up, or at least fingers crossed that's the hope.
She's probably just going to say, like, you know, you're just
you're full of it, bud.
That's not actually how you operate.
But
that's how I want to operate. I can tell you that. You know, hey, I don't always do what I want to do. You know?
Like you said, it's about the intention, though. A piece that I really want to get into, and it's probably very congruent with what you have to work with in the coaching world as well. How did you get to the point of setting pride aside and relying on others and trusting others to help? You obviously moved in with your parents, and that was, I mean, they were there for Theodore in his birth, from what it sounds like timeline wise. And I'm sure your wife hasn't been able to do this alone. You've needed to rely on others while you're on the road, chasing jobs or recruiting or at tournaments or trying to win in Omaha, different things like that. And I know that that can be tough to set aside the things you care about, what you want to do, the goals you have, or the plans that you have, and trusting that someone else can carry that out for you.
Yeah. So I don't think I really did a great job with that until I got to Wake, where I started to trust more people with work. As far as things at home, my wife's had to do the lion's share of it by herself, because we really haven't had any family or friends around since we moved to Maryland. So the last 8 years, so the majority of our kids' lives, she's been solo and had to do everything by herself. So I have to basically trust her with everything with the family. As far as like development and stuff like that, when I got to Wake, I had a little bit more help with the recruiting with Billy Salento, and then player development stuff. I started to trust guys a little bit more, like Mike McFerrin and Sean Fisher. with some things. And then the analytics team was pretty helpful. Now as a head coach, like Coach Walter said this to me a while ago about how when you're a head coach, you're not going to get to sit there and do as much with the players as you're used to. I haven't quite experienced that yet because the kids aren't back on campus, but I can tell you that the first 45 to 50 days have been maddening. So I think you have to surround yourself with good people. You have to set expectations and standards, and you have to try to give them the ability to work. I think when you're running a business, you have to prioritize. I've had to sacrifice plenty of things. I have a great group of friends that I grew up with that I love, and they probably think that I'm not as engaged because I'm literally never around. I haven't seen some of them in years. And that part stinks. I don't really love that. I'm not proud of it. But for me, it's always been my immediate family first, and then my team second. And I've never really thought about anything else. So I think if you want to be successful and you want to be a good father and husband and you want to excel at your job, you have to really minimize what your focuses are. So you can't really get worried and get caught up in like going to concerts or like going and hanging out with the boys and going golfing and playing poker. Like, you don't have the means if you want to run a successful company or you want to be successful at work and be the best dad you can be. You have to sacrifice some things, right? Like, you can't do everything if you want to be really elite. Now, you could do things like on a surface level and do everything, but if you want to be the best, you can't do everything. I think you kind of have to like really narrow your focus and prioritize what matters to you. And that could even mean just like even watching TV, right? Like, just like simple things. Like, if you want to be really great at it, and maybe that's because I talk too much. Maybe that's because I'm not as gifted and smart as most people. So for me, I have to fully immerse myself in whatever it is I'm doing. So I have to narrow my focus dramatically. And I really don't have anything else I think about other than my kids, my wife, and my team.
Very much aligned with that line of thought. It's something that I've struggled with immensely. Part of what I think has enabled me to get to where I'm at with Flex Pro now. I struggled with it for a really long time when I was coming off of my own shoulder injury way back when I was playing. And I had this weird, what I thought was weird at the time, identity crisis of I'm not what I thought I was. And really, it took years of self reflection and work and conversation to realize that yes, I thought I was a baseball player. I thought that was my identity. But what enabled me to even get to that point was that I identify as an all in person. There are only so many things that I have bandwidth for. And if it is in my 1 to 5 things that I will even consider on a daily basis, that is getting my 100% focus. So it's going to be my wife. It's going to be baseball. Now just the vehicle for baseball has changed a little bit for me. Now it's focusing on elbows rather than trying to have the perfect swing or throw as hard as I can or something like that. And I know that I think, or I say I know, one of the things that I think I'm going to struggle with is I know the sacrifices are going to come now that I have something else in life that I have to be all in for. And it's not like I don't want to be. I want to be all in for my daughter, but I guess I'm scared of what I'm going to lose because I have something else. And I know I can only handle so much at a time.
So I'll give you some other advice on that. I remember it was like August-ish, and my son was born in November. So I was in Georgia recruiting at Lake Point, and I was at a game, and the hitting coach at the time at Virginia, Kevin probably doesn't even know we had this conversation. So it's very good insight to say that you never know when you're going to say something to somebody that's going to make an impact. But I remember it vividly. I was sitting there and I was like really stressed out. And I said to McMullen, because he had like 3 or 4 kids. I don't remember the number. He had 3 kids maybe. And he's been a really good hitting coach for a long time. And I was like, Kev, like, I'm like really nervous. Like, how am I going to be a great college baseball coach and be a great father? Like, how do I do all this? And, you know, you don't realize what you're capable of. And he said to me, like, oh, you're going to be a better coach now that you're a parent. And I was like, really? Why? He's like, because you're going to start to coach kids like they're your kids. You're going to start to understand what it is to be a parent. You're going to have a better understanding of it. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And here's the analogy I'll give to you. Like, I remember when I first got to college and we had study hall and lifts, and it was the first time I was lifting regularly. And I lived on the third floor of my freshman dorm, and we didn't use the elevator, so we had to walk up the stairs. And I felt like I couldn't even walk up the stairs because I was so tired. We had class and we had practice. And I just remember being like, it was the hardest thing. The first semester, freshman year, so hard. I remember going home for break and telling our family chiropractor, he's like, how's school going? He was like so excited to talk to me. And I was like, oh, I'm busy. I'm so tired. He's like, life's only going to get busier. And I remember like, you don't know what you're talking about. I remember thinking it was like the hardest thing ever at that time. And then, by the time you become a junior, you feel like you have so much free time because you start to understand all the little things and it's not that much of a big deal anymore. And then it's the same thing when you first become a parent. You feel like you have no time. You feel like you don't understand how you're ever going to get anything done. And then all of a sudden it's not that big of a deal and you can manage it. And then you have a second child. Like, oh my goodness, it's so hard. Then all of a sudden it becomes 3. And then like you're an assistant coach and you think you're so busy. Then you become a head coach. And then it's like there's even more. So the point of what I'm saying is life always gets more challenging. There's always more stuff on your plate. And whenever you do something new for the first time, it seems daunting and you don't know how you're going to do it. But then you figure it out. You figure out your schedule. You figure out your systems. You figure out your routine and you become more efficient with them. And then you can have a greater capacity to do more. And that's life. That's evolution, right? Like you keep intaking more. I sent this out to the team the other day and I'm going to mess up how it was said, but it was like a foolish doer will outperform a smart thinker any day of the week. And essentially what it's saying is by doing, even though you might not have the right plan, you're going to figure out more. You're going to iterate your process. You're going to get creative. You're going to learn how to do things. You're going to adapt. You're going to create new skills. And as long as you have the right perspective and the right mentality and you have the right navigational beacon, for me, I'm always about whys. So when you can have that understanding of why you're doing things, it allows you to get through a lot and you realize what's important and you prioritize it and you attack those things first. You don't have to be the best at it. You don't have to be perfect at it. But as long as your desire to be great is there, as long as you're self-reflecting and iterating your process, it's going to get better and it will. And in fact, just like player development, you need to make those mistakes and learn so you can grow. That's ultimately the essence of it all. And yeah, I just wrote a mission statement for our baseball program the other day, and I'll actually read it to you here. So the mission statement I wrote the other day was to build an environment that drives personal growth, develops grit, cultivates gratitude, and achieves greatness in all aspects of life. For me, like that's kind of like the essence of everything I'm trying to do, right? And that with my family, that's with my team. For a while, my personal why in my profession was that I wanted to use baseball as a vehicle for my players to be the best version of themselves. And it's kind of the same thing. It's always building, it's adapting. Like I started at the bottom of college baseball. We were the worst Division II team in America. Like that's where I started. And as a player, I wasn't very good. I was a average player, a below average player at best. I thought I was good because I was pretty decent in high school baseball in New Hampshire. But in the spectrum of things, it's really not much. And so you talk about the identity crisis. Like I went to college and I thought I was going to be a major leaguer. And I learned real quick that I was so far from that. So I had to figure out like where were my passions going to be best suited and best focused. And about halfway through college, I realized I wanted to be a coach. And ever since then, that's where I put my attention. Where you put your intention is what will grow. So what you think in your mind, you can hold in your hand. Whatever you see, whatever you believe, you can do. It's just going to take time and you're going to have to figure it out. Like you're going to have to roll with the punches, so to speak.
Now, maybe this is a time for you to go back and reflect a little bit. And trust me, this is going to help me as well. You talked about how much introspection has helped you in taking the time for yourself. Obviously, things have gotten busy with the job shift, so you've had a lot less time for yourself lately. But when did you really start taking that on? Where did it start? And are there things specifically that you can really like go back to and say like this in my mind never would have happened if I didn't take the time to myself to step away and think and write and really just be the best version of yourself, not for the others, but for you?
Everything, literally everything. Yeah. I would say that like the self-help and the growth and the thinking started to really take fold around my third year at St. John's. Blanky was really into reading, and so I started to read a lot of books, and I kind of went through a period of time where I was just devouring books and I was trying to learn as much as I could. And that segued into, that was like probably my last 2 years at St. John's, and probably like my first 2 years of Maryland. I just was a voracious reader, and I was reading every book on culture, leadership, skill acquisition I possibly could. And then when COVID hit, I started making a lot more about personal development. Ty Blankmeyer, Blanky's son, actually gave me a book called Breath by James Nestor. And then we had a little group chat with one of my best friends I grew up with, a scout that was a friend of ours. Mike McFerrin, honestly, was in this group chat as well, and Ty. And the five of us would have this accountability chat on breathing. And we started to share a lot of like videos and things on breath work, meditation, visualization. I got really deep into that stuff. I started to really focus on it. Again, that was also another thing that was presented to me for the first time, again, from my wife, was like the law of attraction. I started to like look into that when we were actually made my first year coaching. I started to look into the law of attraction. And then as that started to happen, I started to look a lot more into the science behind it and how the brain works. Started to study, like watch podcasts and listen more of like Dr. Andrew Huberman and things like that, and start to understand like the neuroscience behind it. And I've gotten really into energy frequencies. And so it's just like always evolving. And then the more you understand, the more you're exposed to, the more you can process information. And, you know, I'd say the entire time I was at Maryland, it was all about like personal improvement. That's what I tried to help my players with, was the mental game, habit formation, managing of your time, how you speak to yourself, what you think, what you say, your affirmations. That's, you know, I worked on some things too, like from a pitching development side, but like I wasn't, and at the time that there really wasn't a lot. Like TrackMan was just kind of coming out. Like there wasn't like a ton of facilities. Like the only facility at the time was like Driveline. It wasn't like today where like Pitching Ninja was just starting. There wasn't like all this information that's out there. So I was kind of coming up while all that was happening. And towards the end of my time at Maryland, that's when like this whole data analytics and biomechanics started to like really become a thing. We were kind of early adapters because we didn't really have it at Maryland. But again, Tom Walter was kind of on the forefront of putting that in at Wake. When I had the opportunity to go there, they had all this technology and resources. And I would say I kind of shifted from like primarily like self-help, leadership, culture building, mentality, psychology, how the brain works, energy, to starting to focus a lot more on like skill acquisition, player development, things of that nature. But I don't think you can actually like really focus on those specifics unless you understand the personal piece. The other benefit I had to a lot of this was I coached baseball from the lens of like not having technology for a long period of time. And I was blessed to be around some really great coaches that knew how to win and knew how to see the game from kind of a old school lens, if you will, where you can pay attention to the game. I think one of the problems that like you see in player development is a lot of this stuff is new age and cool and new, but like you're hearing it for the first time and you want to use the lingo and you want to understand it. But a lot of times like you don't really know what those numbers mean and how they actually like transition to the game. And so for me, again, like I felt very anxious about not understanding that stuff, and I felt like it was a priority. And then I was thrown into like the epicenter of technology and data in baseball, and I didn't have that background, but I think it was a blessing because I had to learn, I had to do. I'm going to mess this quote up, but this is a General George Patton quote, and it's definitely wrong, so don't quote me on it, but I'll give you the gist of it. But basically, he says, a bad plan executed with aggression is better than the right plan executed timidly. And again, it's about doing. Like, just go do. There's this really good speech by somebody, I forget what his name is, but Matt Westinger sent it to me years ago. And this guy talks about doing. Just do it. Like, you have this, just do it. Because if you go out in business, if you go out and you're aggressive and you do, and you're decisive and you're quick acting, yeah, you might make a mistake, but think about the skills you just learned by doing something. I think so oftentimes people sit on the sideline waiting to get involved and they don't take the initiative to be aggressive to do something. Whether it's right or wrong, if your intention is to be the best, you're going to figure it out. So just do it. Stop trying to wait for the right time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's massive. I think I'll take the time for one more question because I know both you and I have a few things holding us back right now from really getting super deep in the weeds.
We can do this another time too.
For sure. I appreciate that and probably have some additional offline texts and calls for you just when I'm really in the thick of it because I know if someone else is up at 4:30 a.m. trying to solve a problem, it's probably going to be you, whether that's for good reason or bad reason, but just trying to figure it out. So this last one, I think, is another one that's very connected to both coaching and parenting, which is why I'm so curious about it. When and how do you manage solving a problem for someone to make it easier versus letting them learn the lessons along the way?
Wow, that's deep. Okay, so I've tried to bulldoze a lot of scenarios for players over the years. And we'll go back to when I first got to Maryland, we had like 8 pitchers. And we had a pretty good run at the end of my time at St. John's where I really started to dive into a lot of this mentality stuff and it started to work. And so when I got to Maryland, we only had 8 pitchers. We didn't have the talent. We didn't have the depth. And I was like, I'm going to will these guys to be good. And my first year at Maryland, I think we completely outkicked our coverage, even though we had a mediocre year as a team. Pitched far better than we should have for what we had. And then year 2, I got some more players in, and we're going to be even better. But I was relentless. Like, I was texting guys at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, text them at midnight. Like, I was nonstop. I had this idea in my mind that if I texted them every single day as soon as I woke up and every day before I went to bed, something impactful, like I was going to will them into having this mentality. I really believed that. And what I did was I turned off a lot of guys. They tuned me out. It didn't work at all. They were like, this guy's too much. Like, he's over the top. Like, I can't stand this guy. And it was hard for me to swallow that. It was really hard, but it was the lesson I needed to learn. And I was a little bit more flexible with how I gave information when I got to Wake. So I think if I hadn't done that at Maryland, then I don't know that I would have gotten the buy-in that I did when I went to Wake. And again, it's like constantly trying to find the happy medium of what's too much and what's too little. I do know this, though, that no matter how good you think you are as a coach or a teacher, there's no greater teacher than the game. Because at the end of the day, if you're not really being tested when the bullets are flying, you're not really being tested. The real truth of the matter is the greatest development you can have is, again, by doing, by figuring things out on your own. And you need to learn how to exhibit patience as a coach, which sometimes is hard for me. And you need to understand that there's a fine line between allowing them to fail a little bit and putting the net under them too soon, right? And I think that same thing goes for being a parent. I think the same thing goes for cultivating a workforce if you're starting a company or building a team. And that's honestly one of the problems that we have in college baseball today. This is a really interesting juxtaposition that we all are facing. And nobody likes to talk about the elephant in the room, but it's the truth. And I'm guilty of this too, so I don't want to sit back and be throwing rocks at others and like, I have all the answers. I don't. I want to be clear on that. But this is an issue that we're all dealing with. And here's the issue that I'm going to talk about. We all scratch and claw for the best high school recruits in the country. And then they get to school And only a couple of them really get to play right away. Very few, especially at the higher levels. And then what happens, because everybody's so enticed into getting the older guy that's already proven, a lot of guys get pushed out. And what's really ironic about a lot of this is a lot of these Power 4 schools, we fight, scratch, and claw for these top 150, top 200 players out of high school. But, the top 25 or 30 of them, they sign and they go to professional baseball. The next 50 or 60 of those that are pretty good, maybe they play at their schools, maybe. But the lion's share don't. And what happens when they're not playing is they get disgruntled. They feel like they're lied to. They lose confidence. They feel pressure. They're not able to perform. And so they're asked to leave and they have to transfer. And then ultimately, people all fight for those kids from the low-level Division I's and mid-majors that have performed, and they want to grab those guys, which is so ironic because they were all passed on a year or two prior. But that's who everybody's going after right now. And the truth of the matter is they were given the opportunity to fail. They went to a place where they could iterate their own process and they could learn and they could grow. And then ultimately they got confident and they acquired skills. So the real fine line in all this is like, how do you blend the two? And I don't think anyone has the exact answer on this yet. It's a problem that as educators and teachers, everybody faces this right now, but it's kind of the problem with college athletics. I think college athletics and college baseball in particular for a while surpassed pro ball and player development. But now that we have this new age that we're in, they're not giving kids enough reps to be able to actually learn and iterate their process. And that's how, in some ways, pro ball is starting to catch up and pass college again. And so it's, again, finding that fine line of like teaching and providing information while also giving people the chance to go out and do and make mistakes and learn some accountability and learn how to deal with failure and learn how to overcome things. And that's what pro ball gives you. You play 162 games. Like, you got to go out there every day until eventually they fire you or you move on to the next level, right? Like, you just play so many damn games. And the sad part about pro ball is it's not about winning as much as it is about personal development and player development. That's one of the things that college does do, is it teaches you how to win more and be in a team environment a little bit more. But there's just so many layers to all of these things, right? There's so many layers to all of it. And every piece of it matters. I don't think there's any one person out there that has all the answers and thinks they have it all right perfectly. And I don't know that anyone ever will. But I think that if you have a desire to figure that out, you're going to get closer to having a good process and system that hits on it more than it doesn't.
I appreciate you stepping in for this conversation today, Moose. I know this is likely different than a lot of the conversations you're having right now when you're trying to put a team together and compete for an ACC championship and make a run to Omaha. But it means the world to me that you're willing to take the time to talk about parenthood and talk about life and really just what goes on in your head, the other world outside the lines. So this has been awesome, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. We'll get in touch soon about getting some Flex Pros over here at Duke in Durham, but we could talk about that at some later dates.
For sure, man. Yeah, looking forward to continuing to work with you. It's been awesome at Wake, and I can't wait to bring that to Durham as well. But to everyone out there, thanks for listening to Moose and I babble a little bit. You might have tuned in to hear about planes of rotation or developing an elite staff and arms around the clock and things like that. But no, you got to listen to fatherhood, making your wife happy, and helping me feel a little bit more confident in a couple days when my baby girl arrives. So Moose, once again, thanks a ton. Go Blue Devils. Best of luck with everything that you're juggling right now. And to all the listeners, thanks for laying back with us.